Liberation movements throughout history share a fascinating pattern. They often start with a single act of courage that spreads like wildfire. Today, we're exploring how seemingly isolated protests became unstoppable forces for change.
Let me start with something remarkable from 1970. The Salinas Valley in California, where up to 10,000 farm workers sparked the largest agricultural strike in U.S. history. What compelled so many to risk everything?
Well, the conditions were absolutely inhumane. These workers spent endless hours bent over lettuce fields in scorching heat, with minimal water and exposure to harsh chemicals. But here's what's fascinating. When they finally stood up for basic dignity, the response revealed exactly what they were fighting against.
You mean how the growers immediately deployed sheriffs and legal injunctions? The contrast between workers asking for basic humanity and that show of force is striking.
Exactly. And that's when something unexpected happened. The California Migrant Ministry transformed the entire nature of the protest. Picture this: church vans pulling up to strike lines, bringing not just bread and blankets, but communion wine. They turned a protest into a sanctuary.
That spiritual dimension reminds me of something Bayard Rustin said about protest itself conferring dignity. His story as the architect of the March on Washington is particularly relevant here.
Oh man, Rustin was absolutely brilliant. Here's a black gay Quaker who had been imprisoned for refusing military service. Yet he understood something profound about resistance. He taught King that nonviolence wasn't passive. It was a strategic way to expose injustice without matching its brutality.
Speaking of strategic resistance, what about that incredible moment in Paris, August 1944? The liberation scene with church bells drowning out sniper fire?
That's such a powerful image. And you know what's fascinating? De Gaulle was already working to shape the narrative even as the fighting continued. In a letter to his wife, he dismissed ongoing gunfire as mere buffoonery, trying to frame it as purely French victory rather than acknowledging Allied involvement.
That reminds me of how narratives around women's suffrage were controlled. The 1970 Women's Strike for Equality brought 50,000 marchers to Fifth Avenue, the largest women's protest at that point. Their slogans were brilliant too.
Like, "Don't iron while the strike is hot," and "We are the 51% minority." They used humor to make serious points about equality. But here's what's chilling. We're now seeing some voices actually calling to repeal the 19th Amendment. It shows how rights aren't permanently won.
That's a sobering thought. How do these historical movements connect to current struggles for justice?
Well, look at what's happening in Gaza right now. The same questions about human dignity, sovereignty, and international response. Or consider modern labor movements facing similar tactics to what those farm workers encountered. The playbook of power hasn't changed much.
So what you're saying is these aren't just historical events. They're blueprints for understanding and responding to current challenges?
Exactly. Whether it's workers organizing for better conditions, communities demanding justice, or people globally calling for peace, it's all part of this ongoing story of liberation. Each movement faced similar opposition: state violence, smear campaigns, attempts to control the narrative.
But in each case, people found ways to resist. They transformed everyday actions into powerful statements. Bread becoming sustenance for strikers, church spaces becoming organizing centers.
And that's really the key message here. These moments show us that change is possible, but it never comes easily. It requires courage, persistence, and most importantly, solidarity. The question isn't just about what happened then, it's about what we're doing now.
That's such a crucial point. These historical movements show us that rights and dignity have to be actively defended, not just won once and forgotten.
Looking at these movements together, we can see how they're all connected by this thread of human dignity. Whether it's farm workers in California, civil rights activists in Washington, resistance fighters in Paris, or women marching for their rights, they're all part of this larger story of people standing up for basic humanity.
And that story continues today, doesn't it? We're seeing new chapters being written in real time.
That's right. The same spirit that drove those movements is alive today. The question for each of us is, how will we contribute to the next chapter? Because history isn't just something that happened. It's something we're making every day through our actions and choices.
Well, that certainly gives us a lot to think about and act on.
Indeed, it does. And perhaps that's the most important lesson from all these movements. Change doesn't just happen. It requires people willing to stand up, speak out, and sometimes face serious consequences. But when enough people join together, remarkable transformations become possible.